Firefighter Liu Mingke, who sacrificed himself in rescuing people at the fire scene, was reborn into a world that devours the starry sky and became Dike, the husband of Jiang Fang, the teacher of Luo Feng at the war god training camp. Hunting monsters in the wilderness, in order to save Dike, who was poisoned and unconscious by Jiang Fang, Liu Mingke occupied the magpie's nest and awakened a memory the scene of Kodi, a peerless genius figure in the history of the human race in the universe and a disciple of the Chaos City Lord, being chased by the Zerg tribe from then on. Liu Mingke began his journey of constantly awakening and practicing as a strong person in the various heavenly worlds. In the world of Manghuang, Liu Mingke awakened some memory information of the Baixio world god. In the world of Snow Eagle Lord, Liu Mingke awakened the understanding of the universe god Nine Cloud Emperor towards the unity of space. In the world of Panlong, Liu Mingke awakened the four divine beasts' understanding of the basic four-element law. This book is about the rise of the heavens, which mainly devour the starry sky. By integrating the cultivation system and understanding of the laws of the heavens, Dike will eventually transcend the universe and become the most powerful existence in the Hunyuan space. Keywords of the novel: awakening from swallowing the starry sky without pop-ups, awakening from swallowing the starry sky. Download the full text, and read the latest chapters from Swallowing the Starry Sky. Chapter 1. Flame Gods. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Flame Gods. Heat. Very hot. Liu Mingke, who was scorching hot all over, seemed to be being roasted by the fire. In a daze, he still remembered the last scene of him rescuing people on the fire. Liu Mingke is a firefighter. While rescuing people on a fire, he was hit by collapsed objects in order to protect the rescued and his comrades. With intense pain and heat, his consciousness fell into darkness. Didn't I die? Liu Mingke, who had regained consciousness, became somewhat frightened. What's going on? Why are my eyelids so heavy that I can't open them? And, my whole body is hot and numb. My eyes have been burned. What should my body be burned to? Liu Mingke was thinking about it when suddenly some unfamiliar memories flooded into his mind, leaving him confused. RR virus. Great Nirvana. Monsters. Warriors. Isn't this devouring the starry sky? Am I crossing over? And then, some equally unfamiliar scenes flooded into Liu Mingke's mind, as if he saw a grand canyon filled with endless red flames, like a sea of fire. In the canyon, a figure dressed in crimson gold armor stood suspended in the air, like a deity in flames, emitting a terrifying aura that caused the surrounding flames to burn fiercely and even the space to tremble. What is that? Then Liu Mingke saw a scene that shook him even more. In the dark void in the distance, little by little light appeared, as if it was a meteor shower. Streams of light quickly descended from the sky, slowly approaching. It was not a meteor shower, but huge, ferocious humanoid beetle-like monsters. Densely packed, a large number of golden ferocious humanoid beetles transformed into golden streams of light, spreading throughout the void like armies. Then, dazzling beams of light shot out almost simultaneously from their ferocious arms, resembling knives. In an instant, the entire void turned into a golden ocean, with dazzling golden lights converging, causing the space to violently oscillate and burst, revealing the terrifying spatial turbulence. Various chaotic shattered spaces and stacked spaces surged and flowed. All the attacking powers gathered and shrouded the crimson golden armored figure hanging in the flames, which completely stunned Liu Mingke. What surprised Liu Mingke even more was that in the face of this almost unavoidable and terrifying attack, the first and foremost figure of the crimson and golden armor took the initiative to counterattack, taking out a dark red sword covered in complex secret patterns, and then struck a terrifying and heart-wrenching blow. In an instant, the sword light turned into a crimson pile yen, like a river of flames rushing through the chaotic spatial turbulence, tearing apart the golden light in half. At this moment, the figure of the crimson golden armor was as incomparable as a deity. But then came an even more terrifying attack accompanied by an extremely piercing sound. A pyramid-shaped nest with a height of over 10 kilometers suddenly appeared in the distant void. The nest was full of holes, and various venoms and gases diffused from it. At the same time, those ferocious beetle-like humanoid monsters also roared, protruding sharp mouthparts like glass tubes, and dazzling white light shot out of those mouthparts like lasers. Thousands of ferocious beetle-like humanoid monsters launch attacks together, manipulating thousands of white light beams to converge at a point, causing the unrecovered space to become increasingly chaotic. The violently oscillating universe is like a domino effect, collapsing in all directions towards the ground. Bang! In an instant, it was as if a supernova had erupted, and a terrifying attack produced a super-large and dazzling light ball with a diameter of tens of millions of axioms, and the center of that light ball was the crimson golden armor figure hanging with a knife in the sea of fire. The devastating scene made Liu Mingke's heart tremble, even more fearful and powerless than when he was knocked down in the sea of fire. He felt that he could not resist it at all. The terrifying attack power, with just a few aftershocks, was enough to make it fly to ashes. However, as the terrifying attack power spread, the chaotic space slowly returned to normal and had been destroyed into a terrifying abyss-like pit, without the fiery sea of the canyon. The figure of the crimson golden armor still hung in the air. He's not dead yet. Faced with such a terrifying attack, he hasn't died yet. Is he still human? Liu Mingke was filled with shock and disbelief. No, his breath has become so weak. If he were a deity in flames before, emitting endless surging power. Now, it's like a phantom, just a facade. When Liu Mingke was shocked, the pyramid-like nest that was over 10 kilometers high in the distant void suddenly appeared in front of the figure of the crimson golden armor, and at the same time, an invisible and terrifying wave descended. The moonlight shone through the shattered and dusty floor to ceiling windows, illuminating the dirty and messy living room of the villa. It landed on the young man lying on the sofa with the seat cushions flipped over, his skin turning red, his body trembling at times, and his expression clearly showing some pain. Under the moonlight, it was faintly visible that the young man seemed to be in his 20s. His sword eyebrows were twisted, his nose was high, and his tightly closed lips occasionally twitched unconsciously. Dike, hold on. You must hold on. The woman in a tight black leather combat suit, outlining a perfect curve, sat on the sofa, letting the handsome young man's head rest on her legs. Watching the young man's painful expression, she couldn't help but whisper anxiously and painfully. In addition to this young couple, there are 4 other figures in the spacious living room. They either lean against the wall, sleep with weapons in their arms, or sit cross-legged on the ground, with their eyes closed and their bodies stained to some extent with the smell of blood. Suddenly, a skinny man sitting cross-legged on the ground, dressed in a silver-gray combat suit, opened his eyes, as if there was a flicker of electric light in his eyes. He then stood up and walked to the sofa, frowning at the young man lying on the sofa. He then said to the woman, "Jiang Fang, don't worry too much. The red-crowned golden snake is a very rare venomous snake monster, and even if you return to the military supply base, it will be difficult to obtain detoxification serum for a while. But fortunately, we killed the red-crowned golden snake and gave its gallbladder to Dike to swallow. Even if it couldn't completely detoxify, it could delay the venom. Now, it depends on Dike's willpower. After all, he is a warrior-level warrior, and although the poison of the red-crowned golden snake is powerful, it is a chronic poison. As long as we can survive tonight, we can slowly eliminate the toxin by relying on our genetic ability," the lean man continued. After all, the poison of the red-crowned golden snake is very special and can be considered a neurotoxin. Now that Dike is unconscious, can he really hold on? A young man who was originally sleeping by the corner of the wall also got up and walked over, frowning as he looked at Dike lying unconscious on the sofa. As soon as his words fell, Dike, who was lying unconscious, suddenly felt a surge of excitement all over his body. He opened his eyes and gasped for breath as if he had been suffocated, with a clear look of fear in his eyes. "Dike. You finally woke up. Do you know that? You scared me to death. Why are you so foolish? You want to block that red-crowned golden snake for me. Alright, it's okay, just wake up, just wake up. Seeing Dike wake up, Jiang Fang was pleasantly surprised and excited with tears in her beautiful eyes, tightly hugging him. Dike. Liu Mingke muttered with a puzzled expression on his face, his eyebrows furrowed as he held onto his forehead with one hand. This made the skinny man and the young man beside him, who were also somewhat surprised, also have a slightly suspicious expression on their eyebrows. The skinny man couldn't help but ask in a deep voice, Dike, don't you remember what your name is? Dike, he probably lost his memory, right? After all, the venom of the red-crowned golden snake belongs to neurotoxins. Could he have been brainwashed by the snake venom? The young man beside him couldn't help but wonder. Dike, what's wrong with you? Do you really don't remember who you are? Do you still remember me? I'm Jiang Fang. Jiang Fang also nervously asked. My head hurts so much, it's so messy, let me think. Liu Mingke covered his head and quickly sorted out the messy memories belonging to Dike in his mind. After a moment, he finally figured out the identities of the three people in front of him. New book open. The internal investment has passed. Seeking support for collecting and recommending tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Phantom Team. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Phantom Team. Firstly, Liu Mingke quickly confirmed the fact that his soul-pierced rebirth became Dike. And Jiang Fang is the wife of his current identity. Jiang Fang. This name is a bit familiar. It seems that in a novel that devours the starry sky, Luo Feng's teacher at the God of War training camp is Jiang Fang. Liu Mingke, who frowned and covered his head, flashed memories of Jiang Fang in his mind and muttered to himself, in the God of War training camp at the Extreme Martial Arts School, Jiang Fang, as the training camp teacher, is undoubtedly a God of War powerhouse with the title of Moon Witch, skilled in using a pair of curved swords. And Jiang Fang, who happens to use curved swords, are they really the same person? However, now Jiang Fang has only just become a warrior-level warrior. The current time is 2045, which seems to be more than 10 years earlier than the beginning of Devouring the Starry Sky. Time and age are also in line. Liu Mingke thought of this and became even more certain that this Jiang Fang should be that Jiang Fang. Liu Mingke, who has nothing to do and is obsessed with reading online novels, likes to read books on tomatoes the most, and has read almost every book more than once. Although Jiang Fang is not a very important character in the novel, Swallowing the Starry Sky, she only appeared a few times in the early stages. However, Liu Mingke still vividly remembers Tomato's description of her, with ample breasts, perky buttocks, and a strong waist, which can be considered a perfect figure and a flower in the war god training camp. Whether Liu Mingke's figure is explosive or not, he is lying down now and cannot see clearly without careful examination. However, lying in Jiang Fang's arms with his head resting on her legs, Liu Mingke could clearly feel the elastic touch beneath his head. As for the skinny man and young man next to him, they were named Lingying and Yan Luo respectively. Among them, Lingying is an old veteran warrior and also the captain of their warrior team. With advanced warrior level strength and the nickname Phantom Knife, his sword technique is swift and fierce, and his true strength has even approached the level of God of War. It should not be difficult for him to become a fierce God of War powerhouse in just over 10 years. Yan Luo, on the other hand, is a new member of their Phantom Squad. He is a talented warrior who is already a junior general at the age of only 21, with unlimited potential and full potential to become a God of War in the future. The name Lingying doesn't leave much impression. However, in the novel, Swallowing the Starry Sky, there seems to be a mention of a heavily injured and retired Thunderbolt martial arts school war god, the Phantom War God. Could it be him? Coincidentally, Lingying is also a warrior in the Thunderbolt martial arts school. Liu Mingke, who had memories of Lingying and Yan Luo in his mind, couldn't help but think to himself, as for Yan Luo, it seems to be a warrior senior that Luo Feng had seen before becoming a warrior. According to the book's description, even if he is not a war god strong, he is definitely a powerful warrior at the level of a general. And the other two members of the Phantom Squad, one of whom is an intermediate general-level warrior named Liu Mingke, is also somewhat familiar. His name is Zhuge Tao, and it seems that he is one of the three main managers in the Extreme General Association in Jiangnan Bay City, China, ranking second only to the president more than a decade later. But Liu Mingke is completely unfamiliar with another elementary general-level warrior who is skilled in using hot weapons. Generally speaking, warriors with limited talent will only consider hot weapons. Even with the help of hot weapons, one can reach the pinnacle of combat power at the level of a general. There is no hope for further growth, and naturally there is no potential to become a powerful warrior. It is not surprising that one's reputation is not prominent. After scrolling through the information of the Phantom Squad and gaining a general understanding of them, Liu Mingke finally looked at Ling Ying, Yan Luo, as well as Zhuge Tao and the unattractive sharpshooter who had surrounded him since he woke up. He grinned and said, "Ling, Xiao Yan, Brother Tao, Brother Su, I'm fine, I can't die yet. You don't have to worry too much. Dike still remembers us, that's great." It seems that Dike hasn't lost his memory. Yan Luo was the first to speak with surprise, but his words left several people, including Liu Mingke, speechless. Ling Ying then looked straight at Liu Mingke and said, "Dike, how do you feel now? Are there any discomforts?" "Headache, yes. Besides headache, it's just a slight fever and numbness all over the body." Liu Mingke frowned and felt his current physical condition before finally speaking truthfully. "Well, it seems that the venom of the red-crowned golden snake is still there." Ling Ying nodded slightly as she listened. "However, since the person is awake, there shouldn't be any major problems. Alright, it's already late, everyone rest assured. Let's rest up and return to the supply base as soon as possible tomorrow." After everyone went to rest in response, Jiang Fang hugged Liu Mingke and said some words. She was also tired and relaxed, and finally fell asleep. In the quiet living room of the late night, Liu Mingke, who had quietly opened his eyes, looked at the moonlight outside the window and listened to the roar of the monster that had been heard far away in the night. He realized that this was no longer the original world, nor a safe place like the base city, but a wilderness area where monsters could be encountered at any time and inevitably fought to death with them. He was no longer Liu Mingke, but Dike. Dike. Liu Mingke, who squinted at the corners of his mouth and didn't make any sound, turned his head slightly to look at Jiang Fang, who was sleeping on his side. He couldn't help but curl his lips slightly and said, "Although this world is not safe, he can be reborn and become a warrior-level warrior. He also has a beautiful warrior wife. It seems that God is treating me well. Dike is Dike. I remember when I first learned English, I even gave myself an English name called Dick. The name is just a code name. Since I have already been reborn, why be too obsessed with the past? However, when others travel through time and are reborn, they all have systems or golden fingers. But it seems that up until now, there is no sign of a system appearing on me. As for the golden finger, is it related to the scenes I saw in a daze? Is the figure of the flame god wielding the sword a human powerhouse? Who is he, and why do I see him? And those humanoid beetle-like creatures, as well as those pyramid-like nests, are they insect warriors and insect mother nests? Liu Mingke is not, but now it should be said that Dike is full of doubt and curiosity. Dike, who squinted his eyes and silently pondered in his heart, recalled what had happened since the appearance of the pyramid-like Zerg mother's nest. There was still a lingering fear in his eyes, and an uncontrollable expression of fear appeared on his face. Just as the Zerg mother nest appeared, the Zerg mother emperor released an invisible and terrifying wave. Dike clearly felt that at that moment, he seemed to have transformed into the first to bear the brunt of the crimson golden armor figure. The invisible fluctuations directly affected Dike's consciousness, giving him a suffocating feeling of soul drowning, making him powerless to resist. The powerlessness and fear originating from his soul made Dike feel somewhat hopeless. At that moment, Dike seemed to have experienced something even more terrifying than death, and at the same time, he clearly felt the despair and unwillingness of the crimson golden armored figure so, in almost an instant, Dike was completely awakened, only then did he have the suffocating and terrifying reaction he had when he first woke up. Because he woke up, Dike didn't know what happened afterwards. At this moment, in the quiet of the night, Dike, thinking of these things, suddenly had a strong desire to know what had happened to the figure in the crimson golden armor. Has he died? How do I know what's going on with him? Will he fall into a coma again or sleep, and only see those images again in his sleep? Dike, thinking to himself, closed his eyes and began to try to fall asleep. Unconsciously, Dike, who was mentally exhausted, finally fell asleep in my sleep, as expected. The sea of fire and the silhouette of the crimson golden armor, like a meteor shower, filled the sky with golden flowing light. These familiar scenes reappeared in Dike's consciousness like a video replay. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Encounters on the Return Journey. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Encounters on the Return Journey. Although he had already watched it once, seeing the crimson golden armor figure and a large number of Zerg warriors fighting again, Dike still felt very shocked. Whether it's the terrifying attacks of the Zerg warriors that destroy the sky and earth, or the sharp sword that separates the crimson golden armor from the turbulent flow of space, they are all too strong. Compared to battles at that level, the battles between human warriors and monsters on Earth today are just too childish and simple, just like a child fighting. Accompanied by 2 waves of attacks from massive Zerg warriors, the terrifying waves released from the rapidly approaching Zerg mother nest, as the aura of the crimson golden armor weakened, seemed to originate from the depths of his soul's powerlessness and despair, making Dike feel like he had nightmares and couldn't even wake up, like a ghost pressing on his bed. Soul attack. No, the aura of the crimson golden armor figure is already very weak. As long as a small number of Zerg warriors join forces to attack, it is enough to kill it. The Zerg Mother Emperor does not need to do it personally. Unless she wants to enslave her soul. Thinking of this, Dike became even more frightened. It seems that the Zerg are indeed very skilled in soul attack techniques. At this moment, Dike once again felt the feeling of becoming the figure of the crimson golden armor, feeling his despair and unwillingness like a fish on a chopping board, unable to resist at all, only allowing the invisible and terrifying waves to permeate into one's own soul. Soul enslavement is indeed soul enslavement. Empathetically experiencing the entire process of the golden armored figure being controlled by the soul, that despair and powerlessness, Dike did not want to experience it again. No, the crimson golden armored figure's mournful and desperate roar, as if originating from the will of the soul, echoed in Dike's mind, making his whole body a thrilling awakening. While Dike trembled and suddenly opened his eyes, Jiang Fang also noticed a slight tremble in her eyebrows and opened her eyes. Dike. What's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell? The snake venom on your body is starting to attack again. It's nothing. I just had a nightmare, said Dike, who spoke weakly, his voice trembling uncontrollably. Noticing Dike's abnormality, Jiang Fang thought he was indeed suffering from a snake venom attack in his body but was still trying to hold it back. He couldn't help but hold on to him with some heartache and said, "It's okay. Hold on for a moment, we can go back to the supply base tomorrow." At this moment, Dike was already too preoccupied to think much. Consciously transformed into the golden armored figure of Dike, he felt the feeling of being controlled by his soul. His soul instinctively struggled to resist, and now he was like a drowning person desperately climbing ashore. The exhaustion from his soul quickly made him fall asleep. Dike slept soundly this night, not even dreaming, nor seeing the scene of the crimson golden armored figure fighting the Zerg warrior again. When he woke up, it was already the next day. Dike, who was waking up in a daze, opened his eyes in a daze, feeling the sunlight glaring. Subconsciously, he squinted his eyes and saw a dilapidated and damaged road ahead, with several cracks on the road surface. Looking ahead, on this continuous road surface, one can see dilapidated or already broken cars, trucks, and even some broken tires lying everywhere. Black blood stains can sometimes be seen on the ground. On both sides were endless wilderness, with weeds growing deep. The distant roar of monsters and everything in front of him made Dike realize that what he had experienced before was not a big dream. This was really a wilderness area on Earth that devoured the starry world. At this moment, Dike felt his body bouncing and he looked up to find himself on Yen Luo's back, carrying him on his way. On one side was Jiang Fang, who was closely following him, and on the other side was the sharpshooter Su Gu, who was wrapped in a bullet chain and holding a machine gun. Ling Ying, a skinny man dressed in a silver-gray combat suit and holding a blood shadow war knife, walked at the forefront, while Zhuge Tao, holding a short gun, followed behind, sometimes cautiously looking to both sides and the rear. Dike, are you awake? How do you feel? Are you feeling better? Jiang Fang, who saw Dike wake up, was pleasantly surprised and quickly asked. It's okay, I just feel like I'm still lacking in energy. Dike shook his head lightly. Ling Ying, who was walking ahead, also stopped and turned to walk over, saying, the poison of the red-crowned golden snake in your body has not been detoxified yet. It is normal for you to be weak all over. Don't think too much, rest assured. Everyone work hard and strive to return to the supply base before dark. Ling Ying, who turned to everyone, continued to move forward. Next, a group of 6 members from the Phantom Squad continued to advance along this road, while Dike, lying on Yen Luo's back, also looked curiously at some monsters that could be seen everywhere in the distant wilderness. Although there are very few powerful beast-level monsters appearing in the wilderness, most of them are just scattered beast-soldier-level monsters. The Phantom team rushed back to the supply base and deliberately avoided some places where the monster group gathered, but they still couldn't avoid encountering monsters at noon. The Phantom Squad, who had taken a short break and had eaten some simple food, coincidentally encountered a group of shadow cats hunting outside. There were dozens of them, led by 2 elementary beast-level shadow cats. An encounter battle is inevitable, but all members of the Phantom Squad are generals-level warriors. Even with the injured Dike dragging their feet, these shadow cats are not taken seriously. Seeking death. Seeing those shadow cats surrounding and killing under the low roar command of the 2 elementary beast-level shadow cats, Ling Ying let out a cold shout and rushed over like a phantom. Shui saw the blood-colored knife light flickering, and in the blink of an eye, several high-level beast-soldier-level shadow cats rushing ahead were powerless to throw and fell to the ground, convulsing and leaving a trail of blood. And Ling Ying had already arrived in front of the 2 elementary beast-level shadow cats in an instant, and with a thunderous strike, he struck at the shadow cat leader, who was so frightened that his hair was all over his body. Meow, the leader of the shadow cat, who screamed loudly, was in a hurry to dodge. With the agile speed of the shadow cat, he barely managed to avoid the neck injury, but was still cut in the abdomen by Ling Ying's knife, tearing out a long wound that almost pierced his stomach. At the same time, another elementary beast general-level tiger cat leader also reacted as if he had been awakened, hissing with the agile blade that avoided Ling Ying, and grabbing Ling Ying's face with a paw. Ling Ying, who had taken a step back, blocked the claw of the shadow cat leader with a blood shadow war knife in her hand. Then, with a flick, it passed over the shadow cat's neck. In the splatter of blood, the neck of the shadow cat leader, who had fallen to the ground, had already been cut open halfway. She struggled to get up, but then fell down and convulsed to death. Meow, amidst the mournful meowing of the cat, the leader of the shadow cat, who had initially been injured in Ling Ying's hands, turned around and was about to escape. Feeling the approaching wind behind him, he turned around and grabbed it with a claw. It was already a knife from Ling Ying that cut through his abdomen, and when he fell to the ground, blood mixed with his intestines flowed out. Dike handed over Dike to Jiang Fang and Yen Luo while Su Gu was shooting and sweeping the beast-level shadow cats. He also joined forces with Zhuge Tao to block the shadow cats from flying in 2 other directions. Be careful. Dike, who was somewhat nervous as he watched Su Gu dodge a shadow cat and rush towards Jiang Fang, couldn't help but quickly remind him. In response to his snort, Jiang Fang's curved knife, like a cold moon, sliced through the abdomen of the shadow cat, and the foul-smelling blood rushing towards him. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Base City. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Base City. The shadow cat's blood splattered all over Dike's body, and even a small drop of blood fell on his face. The stench of blood emitted a foul smell, which instantly brought him back to his senses. Then he couldn't help feeling a little nauseous. Watching Jiang Fang, who had cut open the abdomen of the shadow cat with a knife and split half of the body of the high-level beast soldier-level shadow cat, with a calm expression on her face, Dike couldn't help but feel a little relieved that she was now in a poison and weak state. Otherwise, on the way back, it's inevitable to engage in physical battles with monsters. Dike, who has just been reborn through time travel and has not yet truly adapted to his current body, may not easily face a high-level beast soldier-level shadow cat even if he has warrior-level strength. He inevitably appears clumsy, like a rookie who has just become a warrior. That would be too easy to arouse suspicion. It seems that I need to adapt to my current identity in the strength of a warrior-level warrior as soon as possible, Dike said to himself. Fortunately, I have been poisoned this time and will definitely need to cultivate for a period of time when I go back. There is quite enough time to adapt. Dike, are you okay? After killing the high-level beast soldier-level shadow cat, he saw that the other shadow cats had fled in panic due to the death of the two shadow cat leaders. He breathed a little sigh of relief and put away Jiang Fang, who was holding a curved knife in his hand. He turned to look at Dike and couldn't help but reach out to wipe the blood off his face. At the same time, looking back at Ling Ying of Dike and Jiang Fang, he had already calmly started to dig up the bodies of the two shadow cat leaders. Apart from Su Ge still holding a gun and looking around cautiously, Yan Luo and Zhuge Tao also began to deal with some high-level beast soldier-level shadow cat corpses. I saw that both Ling Ying, Yan Luo, and Zhuge Tao used knives or daggers to cut open the base of the shadow cat's tail, and then skillfully pulled out a translucent tendon. Upon seeing this scene, Dike frowned and thought for a moment. He learned from his memory that the tendon in the tail of the shadow cat was incredibly tough and could be used as a material to make warrior uniforms. It was also the most valuable item on the corpse of a cat-like monster. The tail vein of a high-level beast soldier shadow cat is worth about 8,000 yuan. The tail tendons of the leader of the shadow cat, a primary beast general, are worth over 6 million yuan. Of course, a basic beast general level shadow cat is much more difficult to deal with than a high-level beast soldier level shadow cat. Generally speaking, it is easy for beginner level warriors to kill high-level beast level shadow cats. But a primary beast level shadow cat, due to its speed being too fast, often requires the strength of a medium or high level warrior to have enough confidence to kill it. Don't think that a large number of cat-like monsters are weak. In fact, there are also beast generals and even lord-level monsters comparable to human war gods among cat-like monsters. The rumored 9-lived cat demon is a terrifying creature that ranks high among monsters on Earth. Among king-level monsters, it is relatively top-notch. Generally, human beings who surpass the god of war level are not opponents, and only a few strong ones who surpass the god of war level can cope with it. After solving these shadow cats that were sent to the door, several members of the Phantom team continued to set off on their journey. Although they encountered some monsters along the way, they did not encounter any more monster-level monsters. Slowly, as the sky darkened, on the desolate wilderness road with a cool evening breeze, Dike and his companions finally saw the distant lighthouse light symbolizing the path of warriors returning home. Supply base, finally back. Ling Ying and others, who saw the light of the lighthouse, relaxed with a smile on their faces. For warriors, every time they go to the wilderness to hunt monsters is an adventure and may never return. So being able to come back safely is something worth celebrating. Warriors are a group of people who truly pin their heads on their waistbands and dance on the tip of their knives. In addition to thermal weapons, they are also the only power that humans can fight against monsters, so in today's human society, warriors have so many privileges and become a special group. Is it a military district? As he approached, Dike also looked at the heavily guarded military camp ahead with great interest. The entire military camp covers a large area, and various hot weapons can be seen everywhere on the outskirts of the camp. There are gun turrets and heavy machine gun firepower points everywhere, and a large number of muzzles are aimed at the wilderness outside the military camp. The soldiers patrolling and standing guard also hold various excellent firearms and weapons. The military district is not a decoration, but a human stronghold outside the base city, fighting against the frontline of monster defense. The soldiers here, who fight monsters all year round, have seen blood. In addition to hot weapons, there are also some elite warriors who use cold weapons. The warrior supply base is located within the military district and is a special area specially designated for warriors to rest. At the supply base, after having the military doctor of the military district give Dike a brief examination, the group quickly returned to the base city hundreds of miles away by taking a free train with the privileges of a warrior. Jiangnan Base City is one of the only 6 base cities in China today, and it is also the only large-scale human settlement in southeastern China after the Great Nirvana period. It is divided into the main urban area and the 8th David City, with a population of about 200 million. At a hospital in the main urban area of Jiangnan Base City, doctors conducted a detailed examination on Dike and used some drugs to assist metabolism in resolving the venom of the red-crowned golden snake. 2 days later, Dike was arranged to be discharged from the hospital. After all, the red-crowned golden snake is a rare monster that is rare to see, so the serum that can detoxify the red-crowned golden snake is even more rare. Even if it can be obtained, the price is very expensive. Although the venom of the red-crowned golden snake is powerful, most warrior-level warriors will die if poisoned. After all, it is a chronic toxin. As a moderate warrior-level warrior, Dike cultivates genetic energy and has a physical fitness far beyond that of ordinary people. Since he has overcome it, relying on genetic energy to dissolve snake venom will only take some more time, and there is no need to use snake venom serum at all costs. In the main urban area of Jiangnan Base City, Dongyang Community, as one of the top 5 martial arts communities in the main urban area, there are as many as 1,000 or 2,000 martial arts residents here. Although most of them are only warriors, there are also some powerful generals. As for the more powerful god of war level warriors, out of the billions of people on Earth today, there are only 2,000 or 3,000. Each one is like a superhero who can walk through gunfire without any damage and easily destroy high-rise buildings, and is a precious treasure of humanity. Strong strength represents power and status. For the god of war, killing some beast-level monsters casually can earn billions of wealth, and naturally they will no longer live in the warrior community, wandering among ordinary warriors. As a god of war, even if one does not hunt monsters to earn wealth, they will still be attracted by some families, forces, and even national governments, providing conditions that make ordinary warriors envious and unimaginable. In fact, there are soldiers standing guard and patrolling, and the interior is a martial arts community with individual villas, which is already very good. You should know that in the base city, the affordable housing communities where more ordinary people live are almost crowded with tall square cement columns, like pigeon cages, without even elevators. As martial artists, the Dongyang community where Dike and Jiang Fang live is surrounded by small bridges and flowing water, rockery and water pools, and well greenery. The 3-story villas built one by one not only have basements, but also super large terraces and courtyards, covering an area of hundreds of square meters. Even before the Great Nirvana, there were not many villas that billionaires could afford. But now, it is a standard accessory for any ordinary warrior. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Startling up in a dream and practicing knives. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Startling up in a dream and practicing knives among the large villas at number 1031 in Dongyang community, only Dike and Jiang Fang live there. Dike is an orphan, and Jiang Fang also comes from a poor background. Coupled with their recent marriage and no children, this family only has 2 members. Usually, there are nannies and aunts at home who specialize in cooking, and there are also free housekeeping services provided by the community for cleaning and other purposes. For the entire human society, the most important thing for every warrior is to strive to cultivate their genetic abilities and enhance their own strength. So, whether it is the 2 major martial arts schools, Extreme Martial Arts School and Thunderbolt Martial Arts School, or the government, state, and other financial powers, it is only by giving warriors special social status and the best conditions that they will not waste their time on some household chores. The efficiency of using warriors to hunt monsters and earn money is also sufficient to enable them to have a prosperous life without considering the issue of daily necessities. Their consumption is mainly focused on improving themselves and weapons and equipment. Of course, there are also some warriors who are content with the status quo and addicted to enjoyment, relying on their privileges to live and dream. But the vast majority of warriors still have a spirit of hard work and a sense of responsibility. They understand that only when humans give birth to more warriors and unparalleled strength can they fight against the equally powerful monster population that is constantly multiplying. Humans and monsters are 2 ethnic groups in war, destined to be in opposition and constantly fighting until one side is completely crushed or even destroyed. If the strength of the entire monster population is strong enough, with their ferocity, humans will never be allowed to survive peacefully in the base city. This is also why a large number of human warriors go to wilderness areas to roam and hunt monsters. They not only need to collect materials from monster corpses and earn wealth, but also need to hone themselves and enhance their strength through battles with monsters. More importantly, it is necessary to continuously kill the living power of monsters. In this process, although many monsters were hunted, not many human warriors were killed and eaten by the monsters. It is completely a process of mutual consumption and honing, and it depends on who can evolve and grow faster. Returning home, Jiang Fang completely relaxed. And Dike was full of curiosity about this unfamiliar and familiar mansion. He has grown up so much and comes from an ordinary background, but he has never lived in such a good place before. It's like a dream. What surprised Dike even more was that when he was preparing to take a shower in a spacious and clean bathroom, the size of a house, Jiang Fang suddenly came in. Seeing Dike's slightly stunned expression, Jiang Fang couldn't help but say, "You have not cleared the toxins on your body and your body is still weak. Let me help you wash it. Can you help me wash it?" Dike was even more shocked when he heard it. Should it be so exciting from the beginning? What's going on? Are you feeling weird today? Is it because of the influence of snake venom in your body that your reactions have become sluggish? Jiang Fang, who was laughing, continued, "You haven't washed it together before. Didn't you really enjoy washing it with me before? So, what else is more exciting?" Dike tried to hold back his surprised expression without staring, but his whole body had petrified and his heart was filled with lightning and earth fire. Oh my goodness. At the time of sacrifice, Liu Mingke, who was only 19 years old, had never been in a relationship before. How could I imagine that Dike and Jiang Fang, a genius martial arts couple, would have such fun together? However, it seems that no normal man can refuse this kind of thing, so in order to avoid Jiang Fang seeing any flaws and being suspected by her, Dike can only pretend to be calm and enjoy the process of Jiang Fang bathing him. And while washing, the 2 of them couldn't help but wash together with dry firewood and scorching fire. The water came naturally, and in the end, the 2 of them even washed onto the soft king bed in the bedroom. Dike, who had experienced a relationship between a man and a woman for the first time, even though he had seen a pig run, his performance was somewhat unsatisfactory. However, because this body had just been poisoned by the red-crowned golden snake and was still very weak, Jiang Fang did not doubt anything, but couldn't help but mutter to herself that they had been together for so long. Why was Dike so anxious with her when we first started together today? After a fierce battle, even though Dike, as a general-level warrior with good physical fitness, was still weak due to the snake venom in his body. After a moment of lust, he hugged Jiang Fang and fell asleep. In his sleep, Dike, who was in a daze, saw the Grand Canyon with a sea of fire, and the figure of the crimson golden armor hanging above the sea of fire, as the saying goes, once born, twice ripe. I have seen this scene more than once in my dreams, but Dike, who is not strange, became even more curious about the identity of the crimson golden armored figure. Dike, who had just developed a desire to get closer and see the person clearly, then realized that his gaze seemed to extend, and the figure of the crimson golden armor immediately drew closer to him in the blink of an eye. Dike was already facing the figure in the crimson golden armor, and could clearly see the other person's appearance. And at this glance, Dike also immediately had a bright feeling in front of him. The figure in the crimson golden armor looked very similar to the Earthlings, and had a jade-like face, looking very handsome. It's not that kind of gentle and handsome, but rather exudes a strong and powerful beauty, belonging to the kind that easily gives people a good impression. At first glance, it's the kind of upright person with a leadership temperament. Dike looked at this person and inexplicably felt that such a person seemed to be born as the protagonist, the kind of person who caught the attention of the world, and should be a brilliant genius, destined to be a strong person. Surprisingly more handsome than my body after being reborn. It's just unbelievable. Dike, who was secretly muttering in his heart, suddenly saw the handsome red and golden armored guy across from him frown, as if he had noticed something suspicious as he looked up towards the distance. Subconsciously, he followed his gaze and saw a burst of golden light shooting from the distant void, as if in the next meteor shower. Next, seeing the neatly arranged Zerg warriors teaming up to use their attack methods, I once again felt the terrifying attack power of Dike, who was as terrifying as heaven and earth. Subconsciously, I turned to look at the handsome red and golden armor, but what caught my eye was the fierce and terrifying fiery red knife light that seemed to be about to split open space as if the blade light condensed from flames. The scorching and violent destructive meaning made Dike momentarily confused, only feeling that his soul consciousness seemed to be burning. The mysterious taste contained in that blade fell with the blade light, as if imprinted in his mind. On the soft king's bed in the master bedroom of the villa, he suddenly woke up and sat up, his skin turning red and his whole body sweating hot and dry. There was still a hint of shock in his eyes, and a knife light constantly appeared and slashed in his mind. It was like a movie replay, making him inexplicably feel the urge to practice swordsmanship. Subconsciously, Dike, who didn't care about dressing, got out of bed and rushed out of the bedroom to the super-large martial arts training hall on the second floor of the villa, which occupied half of the area. He picked up what he usually used and started practicing waving. As a talented warrior at the level of war general and skilled in wielding swords, Dike naturally chose to practice the sword technique, 9-layered thunder knife, created by the fastest and strongest human god, the Thunder God. He had already mastered the first two types of sword techniques, but had been struggling to fully comprehend the third level. But tonight, Dike practiced the swordsmanship of 9 thunder sabers again, but from the beginning, it was incredibly powerful, like a volcanic eruption, causing every blade to emit a dull and sharp roar, echoing in the martial arts training hall like a muffled thunder. Dike, completely immersed in the knife technique, felt like a cooked lobster, with his skin turning red and hot, like a humanoid volcano about to erupt. He mobilized his energy and blood all over his body, releasing them with the knife technique. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Gene Primitive Cultivation Method. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Gene Primitive Cultivation Method. Jiang Fang, who was also awakened by Dike, noticed Dike's abnormality and couldn't help but get up and follow closely to the martial arts training hall. Seeing the scene of Dike wielding his sword like a madman in the martial arts training hall, Jiang Fang couldn't help but be surprised and anxious. Dike. Subconsciously rushing forward, Jiang Fang was already hit by a sword aura that Dike had slashed at before approaching. She felt the violent aura attacking her body, and her delicate body trembled and stumbled back a few steps to stabilize her figure. Then, she spat out a mouthful of blood and said, pup. Following the roar, accompanied by a deep explosion, the final cut of Dike, as if it had produced a flame blade that was about 10 feet long, struck the floor-to-ceiling glass window in front of him. The intense shock wave of the space shattered the entire specially made tempered glass, shattering into a large number of fragments and shooting them out in all directions. Then Dike, who was full of excitement and regained his senses, collapsed weakly to the ground, his hands holding knives trembling, and his muscles trembling. He gasped for breath as if suffocating. Dike. Jiang Fang, with her jade hand caressing her chest and suppressing the feeling of stuffiness in her chest, couldn't help but quickly step forward and lift Dike up when she saw her powerless appearance. Dike, what's wrong with you? What's going on here? Why are you up late at night practicing swordsmanship? Don't scare me. It's okay. I'm just a bit powerless, Dike said repeatedly. Wife, the knife I just made was quite loud and even shattered the glass. I'm afraid it might disturb the security guards and other warriors in the community. I estimate the security guards will come over to check later. You should go deal with it first. But you, Jiang Fang, are still a bit worried about Dike's current situation, while Dike, who sat up forcefully, put on a cross-legged posture with 5 hearts facing the sky. It's nothing, I should be able to restore my genetic energy by practicing it. Okay. Jiang Fang, who frowned and responded, looked at Dike, who had closed his eyes and entered a state of cultivation. Soon, he heard the sound of the doorbell coming from downstairs, and then hesitated a little before getting up and going downstairs. For Dike, this was his first time practicing the only genetic energy cultivation method practiced by the warriors on Earth in his memory. However, for this body, it has already been practiced too many times and soon entered a state where every cell in the body instinctively absorbs energy from the universe. Compared to the efficiency of absorbing energy from the universe in the past, this time because practicing swords consumes too much Dike, every cell in the body is desperately absorbing this cosmic energy. This effect is even better than Dike's first practice of gene original energy cultivation method when he first became a warrior, and far better than any auxiliary cultivation effect of guidance techniques. Dike can even feel the trembling of his entire body's cells, as if the whole person is undergoing transformation, with every cell and even gene undergoing changes. This is the evolution of life, and also an optimization of life genes. Even if Hong and Thunder God knew about the efficiency of such cultivation, they would probably be surprised. If they could improve so quickly in every cultivation, they would probably have reached the star level and even become legendary cosmic level powerhouses. But at this moment, Dike, who was immersed in cultivation, felt the changes in his body and was full of shock, but he couldn't care about thinking so much. Time quietly passed, and when Dike woke up from his cultivation and opened his eyes, he only felt the sunlight was a bit dazzling. Subconsciously, he raised his hand to block it and squinted outside the shattered and disappearing floor-to-ceiling glass window, only to see that the sun had already risen high. I felt like I had only been practicing for a while, but I didn't expect it to be the next morning, said Dike, somewhat surprised. He got up and moved his body, feeling refreshed. The feeling of weakness in his body had already disappeared, but he felt like his whole body was full of strength. What's so smelly? It seems like there's still some fishy smell, followed by Dike's nose twitching slightly. Subconsciously, he lowered his head and sniffed at himself, narrowly avoiding being smoked out by himself. His bare arms were also covered in a layer of dirt at some point. Wake up. I've been practicing for so long. It seems like last night was really exhausting. Jiang Fang, who arrived at the entrance of the martial arts training hall at some point, couldn't help but cover her nose and say, "Oh my. It smells so bad. Hurry up and wash it." In the bathroom, Dike quickly scrubbed the dirt off his body, drained all the sewage, and added some water before lying comfortably in the warm water of the bathtub. He squinted his eyes and recalled the changes in his body. Dike, who raised his hand and struck with a palm knife, made a burst of anger. As he exerted force, his skin turned faintly red. Unexpectedly, I just felt the blade technique of the crimson and golden armor figure, and felt some of the superficial meaning of its blade technique. It suddenly increased the power of my blade technique by so much, and even made me realize more powerful power techniques, murmured Dike, feeling a little shocked and passionate in his heart. Compared to the nine-fold thunder blade, created by the thunder god, perhaps my blade technique has more potential. Although the cost of my newly discovered knife technique is too high, the power of the sword technique is truly terrifying, like a burst of flames. Moreover, the use of that technique feels like boiling blood and squeezing the power of every cell in my body, allowing me to absorb more cosmic energy while cultivating my genetic energy and improving my strength faster. Speaking of which, it is not a disadvantage, Dike thought to himself. Although he had only just realized some superficial things about this sword technique, its power was already stronger than the second explosive power of the previously trained 9 Thunder Knife, and even stronger than the third explosive power of the 9 Thunder Knife. When I gradually improve this swordsmanship in the future, I believe that the secret script of this swordsmanship will never be inferior to Thor God's 9-fold Thunder Knife. Dike felt full of confidence and expectation in his heart. Even though Dike was unable to systematically learn the swordsmanship of the crimson golden armored figure in the dream, even if he followed the example and imitated it, it was enough to benefit him greatly. "Dike, have you finished washing up? Come down to have breakfast." Jiang Fang's voice interrupted Dike's expectations and fantasies about the future. As he thought of eating, his stomach immediately made a protest-like sound. Cultivating the original energy of genes ultimately cannot replace eating. Dike, who was really hungry, quickly got up and wiped his body with a towel. He changed into a loose training suit like a pajama and hurriedly went downstairs. "Eat slowly, there is more. There is still congee in the pot." In the restaurant on the first floor of the villa, looking at Dike's voracious food, Jiang Fang couldn't help laughing. "Well, after training for so long last night, the poison of the red-crowned golden snake in your body should be discharged almost. Well, I feel much better now, so there shouldn't be any problem. Even if there's still some residual poison, there shouldn't be a big problem," Dike said repeatedly. "Actually, I also want to thank that red-crowned golden snake. If it hadn't bitten me, poisoned and unconscious, I wouldn't have had any enlightenment improvement. The sword technique you used last night was indeed very powerful. Did you become the third level of the 9-fold Thunder Blade? But I saw that the sword technique you used last night has such strong explosive power, it seems to be different from the 9-fold Thunder Blade." Jiang Fang nodded and exclaimed in surprise, but couldn't help but furrow her eyebrows in confusion. Dike smiled and said repeatedly, "That's not really the 9 Thunder Knife anymore, but the sword technique I created based on my own understanding of the 9 Thunder Knife." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Monster Materials. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Monster Materials, the knife technique you created through your own perception. Jiang Fang's beautiful eyes widened in surprise as she heard this and looked at Dike. Last night, Jiang Fang witnessed with her own eyes the terrifying power of Dikona's final blow. It was precisely because she witnessed the power of that knife technique that Jiang Fang couldn't believe that it was actually discovered by Dike. Although Dike, who became a mid-level warrior in his 20s, can be considered a genius among warriors with good body and sword techniques, he cannot be considered a true demon. Moreover, even those genius warriors like demons may not be able to create their own swordsmanship at the level of war generals. The power and explosive power of that knife were comparable to the ultimate moves of some powerful god of war level warriors. If Dike could really create it, then his potential for intelligence would be even more demonic than a demon genius. Yes. Faced with Jiang Fang's surprise, Dike smiled calmly and said, "Do you still remember my reaction after being poisoned by the red-crowned golden snake? In a daze, I only felt hot and dry all over, and the feeling of boiling blood and energy was like boiling in flames, which also made me realize. I thought of mobilizing my whole body's energy and blood, and using the technique of unleashing power like a volcanic eruption, I also had the terrifying power of the knife you saw last night. Is that so? You've just come up with such a powerful sword technique, this. Jiang Fang, who understood the general meaning, still felt a bit incredulous. You should know that many things are easier said than done. Understanding the truth is a different concept from realizing and using ultimate skills. Don't be too surprised. Your husband, I am a genius. In the future, I will become a god of war and even surpass the level of a god of war, Dike said with a smile. You are really confident. Don't worry about the god of war. Do you dare to think about the existence of the god of war? Hearing Yan's mouth smile, Jiang Fang, who looked white, reached out to pick up the bowl he had just put down and said, after cooking a lot of congee, I will give you another bowl. No need. I'm already full, Dike said as Jiang Fang was about to get up and go to the kitchen. He also got up and reached out to pull Jiang Fang into his arms, hugging her waist and laughing mischievously. Now, I want to eat you even more. Don't. Itch. Let's go into the room. Faced with Dike's mischief and those dishonest hands, Jiang Fang moaned coquettishly, and Dike listened to Jiang Fang's faint moans, his breathing becoming slightly urgent. I'll be here. Dike, who had eaten and drunk enough, and had done some indescribable things with Jiang Fang in the living room, finally carried Jiang Fang back to the upstairs bedroom to take a nap. Life in the base city is very peaceful, and as warriors, Dike and Jiang Fang live very comfortably. For warriors who often go on adventures in wilderness areas, returning to the base city is also a rare time to relax. In addition to practicing, they should naturally vent and enjoy themselves, and not let their nerves stay too tense. Dike, who was on the brink of death and still alive, spent 3 days at home with Jiang Fang, feeling as if they were newlywed and shameless, before finally meeting the other members of the Phantom Squad at the invitation of Captain Ling Ying in the main urban area of the base city, in a private room of an antique restaurant. After being full of food and drink, the 6 members of the Phantom team came to a nearby tea room to drink tea and chat. Dike's ability to recover so quickly relies on his genes to eliminate toxins from his body. Congratulations, Captain Ling Ying said. The young man Yen Luo, who had dyed his hair dark red on the other side, also smiled and said, it's indeed something worth celebrating. Captain, since Dike has nothing else to do, can we go to the wilderness earlier next time? Although the poison in Dike's body is not a big deal anymore, he still needs to cultivate for a while, Jiang Fang quickly said. Don't worry. Ling Ying, who glanced at Dike, said, we went to the wilderness to hunt monsters before, but we haven't had enough time to deal with the monster materials we got. So, let's sell those monster materials first and share the money. Then everyone can take a break for a while before considering going to the wilderness. Okay. At least we'll have to wait until Dike's body fully recovers. Zhuge Taoan nodded in agreement and immediately asked, Captain, should we still sell these monster materials to the HR Alliance as usual? Of course. Without waiting for Ling Ying to speak, the sharpshooter Su Gu on the side laughed repeatedly. Although Extreme Martial Arts School and Thunderbolt Martial Arts School are also collecting monster materials, the HR Alliance still offers a higher price in the end. Moreover, everyone's martial arts school contribution value has already reached 2 stars. It's not easy to reach 3-star level in the short term, so there shouldn't be a need to specifically sell some monster materials to martial arts schools to earn contribution value, right? As Su rushed on, Yen Luo stared and said, Su, you don't need it, but I do. My martial arts school contribution value is almost 2 stars away, but it's just a little short. Just give me the materials for a junior beast general level monster, which should be enough. Oh, look at me, I almost forgot. Xiao Luo is still a new warrior. Su Gu patted his forehead and smiled repeatedly upon hearing this. Xiao Luo is already a warrior-level warrior at a young age, and his future prospects are limitless. Maybe in the future, our Phantom team will produce several war gods. At least, the captain must be able to become a war god-level warrior, and it is estimated that he will also become a strong one among the war gods. Captain, you can't forget us brothers then. Su, who was laughing, couldn't help but shake his head and self-deprecate. It's just a pity. As someone who plays with hot weapons, I'm afraid it won't be long before I can keep up with your footsteps. Old Su, don't say that. No matter when it comes, we are all good brothers. Zhuge Tao reached out and patted Brother Su's shoulder. Alright, those monster materials are all in the car. Xiao Luo, you can choose some according to your allocated share later, and we'll send the rest to the HR Alliance Mall to sell together. He glanced at Yan Luo's Lingying and nodded before turning to look at Dike and saying, Dike, the other monster materials are okay to handle, but the body of the red-crowned golden snake was ultimately killed by your sword. You took the lead, so what should be done? I want to hear your opinion. Upon hearing Lingying mention the body of the red-crowned golden snake, Yan Luoduan's eyes lit up with excitement and he said, Dike, red-crowned golden snake. It's still a beast-level red-crowned golden snake, which is extremely precious. Even if it's the body of the red-crowned golden snake, there may be some important people who want to collect it. Such a good thing, a rare item, is not worth selling. Why don't you keep it for now? Dike shook his head and smiled. What am I keeping the body of a red-crowned golden snake for? If it's not well preserved, it won't smell anymore. Let's sell it along with that batch of monster materials. Well, it's not very useful to keep the body of the red-crowned golden snake, Lingying nodded slightly. However, Xiao Luo is also right. Red-crowned golden snake is indeed rare and rare. Beast-level red-crowned golden snake is even rarer and should be able to sell for a high price. As they spoke, the group quickly left the restaurant and took 2 separate cars to the HR Alliance Mall located in the main urban area. They met the person in charge of collecting monster materials from the HR Alliance. The Phantom team is an established elite warrior team, and Lingying is one of the top players among the general-level warriors, with combat power comparable to that of the primary god of war-level warriors. Selling monster materials is also a common practice, so the ones responsible for entertaining them are naturally old acquaintances. When using professional instruments to detect materials from other monsters, Manager Fang, the gray-haired and round-faced old man, was relatively calm. Even though there were many materials from beast-level monsters, and even materials from medium and even high-level beast-level monsters, Manager Fang had seen many of them. But when Lingying finally took out the body of the red-crowned golden snake, which was the size of a fist, with a red coxcomb-like head and a dark red body, and saw the slender snake corpse that was 2 or 3 meters long pieced together, Manager Fang couldn't help but widen his eyes and said, "Is this the red-crowned golden snake? You met the red-crowned golden snake in the wilderness and were able to come back alive." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. The Value of Red-Crowned Golden Snake. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. The Value of Red-Crowned Golden Snake. Upon hearing Manager Fang's exclamation of surprise, Yan Luo couldn't help but stare and couldn't help but say, "By what you mean, we all deserve to die in the wilderness, right?" "Oh, that's not what I meant," Manager Fang, who quickly waved his hand, then chuckled and said, "I'm just too surprised. I didn't expect this rare red-crowned golden snake to be encountered by you. Moreover, it can kill this highly poisonous red-crowned golden snake. Mr. Ling is truly a phantom blade." Manager Fang. "Shame, I didn't kill this red-crowned golden snake," Lingying shook her head and said, "Its speed is too fast and too agile. I was careless and almost let it harm my brother's life. It was my brother who really killed the red-crowned golden snake." Lingying glanced at Dike as she spoke, which immediately surprised Manager Fang and made him look at him. Dike also shook his head and smiled, "Lucky. It's just lucky. I've also heard of the notorious red-crowned golden snake. At the time of life and death, I didn't have to think too much, so I was lucky enough to kill it. Fortunately, although this red-crowned golden snake is highly poisonous, its body's defense is not strong enough, so I was able to cut it into 2 pieces with 1 blow. Alright, Manager Fang, let's quickly check the valuation. Ling Ying on the side hurriedly urged. Manager Fang, who nodded with a smile, immediately scanned the body of the red-crowned golden snake with the precision detection instrument inside the password box and said, although I have heard of this red-crowned golden snake, it is really the first time I have seen it. I saw a red light shining on the body of the red-crowned golden snake, scanning from its head all the way to its tail. At the same time, a series of data also appeared on the small screen of the instrument. Manager Fang, who was staring at the data with a serious expression, also quickly entered some information through a virtual keyboard. After a moment, looking at the information displayed on the instrument screen, Manager Fang's face changed slightly and he looked up at Dike and the others in surprise. What's wrong? Manager Fang. Is there anything wrong with the body of this red-crowned golden snake? Ling Ying couldn't help but frown and ask in confusion as she saw Manager Fang's expression change. Under the puzzled gaze of Dike and his team, they carefully looked at the corpse of the red-crowned golden snake. After taking a deep breath and standing up, Manager Fang looked at Dike and his team with disbelief and said, "This red-crowned golden snake is indeed a beast-level monster." "Hi, I thought you were going to say something." "Of course we know it's a beast-level monster, otherwise how could its speed be so fast?" "Even our captain couldn't resist it," Yen Luo said in silence. Ling Ying frowned slightly and looked at Manager Fang with a slightly suspicious expression, waiting for his next words. And looking at Manager Fang of Yen Luo, he also repeatedly said, "It's not only a beast-level monster, but also a high-level beast-level monster." "What? High? A red-crowned golden snake at the level of a high-level beast general?" Su Gu exclaimed in surprise upon hearing this, and Zhuge Tao beside him also took a cold breath. High-level beast general. Yen Luo stared at the corpse of the red-crowned golden snake on the ground with disbelief. No wonder. No wonder the speed is so fast and agile. High-level beast-level monster. Even Dike, who was equally surprised, couldn't help but squint his eyes at the corpse of the red-crowned golden snake next to Jiang Fang. That's right. According to the scanning results of the instrument, this red-crowned golden snake is indeed a high-level monster, and it is also close to the Lord-level red-crowned golden snake, Manager Fang said and couldn't help but glance at Dike. "Sir, you are really lucky. With the toxicity of this red-crowned golden snake, if it bites you, even a high-level warrior may not be able to resist it." Manager Fang's words also made Yen Luo and his team instinctively turn their heads to look at Dike. When Yen Luo instinctively wanted to speak, he was slightly shook by Ling Ying's frowning gaze. "Manager Fang, let's make an offer." Ling Ying turned to Manager Fang and said directly. Upon hearing this, Manager Fang also frowned slightly and said, "I have received a lot of materials for Lord-level monsters, but I have never received the body of the red-crowned golden snake that is close to Lord-level before. Moreover, the body of this red-crowned golden snake is very complete, except for the snake gallbladder." Snake gallbladder. How could it be that the most precious snake gallbladder is missing? Manager Fang suddenly thought of something and looked at Dike again with some suspicion. "Did you get the poison of the red-crowned golden snake, so you had to take snake gallbladder to suppress the toxicity?" "With the toxicity of the red-crowned golden snake, even if you take snake gallbladder, the general level warrior will definitely die." "Sir, are you already a high-level general level warrior at a young age?" "Good luck. It's just good luck." Seeing Manager Fang's surprised expression, it seemed like he was already a dead person, and Dike could only smile helplessly. Incredible, really incredible. Manager Fang still felt a bit incredulous, while Ling Ying urged him repeatedly, "Manager Fang, quickly quote a price. We have to deal with the body of the red-crowned golden snake. We have other things to do." "Okay." Manager Fang quickly responded to the words and pondered slightly before saying, "This red-crowned golden snake is too rare. There are even fewer trading red-crowned golden snake corpses, and the price. I really can't say for a while. So, please wait a moment, I'll ask for your advice from above. Okay, Ling Ying nodded slightly. After Manager Fang left, Yen Luo couldn't help but keep saying, Di Gu, this is a high-level beast general level red-crowned golden snake close to the lord level. You were bitten and poisoned by it, and you were able to survive. What? Do you also think I should be poisoned to death by it? Dike asked angrily, and Yen Luo immediately chuckled and said, Di Gu, you know I didn't mean that. However, Di Gu, your luck is indeed very good. Perhaps the poison of this red-crowned golden snake is not as scary as we thought. No, the red-crowned golden snake is notorious and its toxicity is definitely not simple. Su Gu shook his head and said, Dike, if I'm not mistaken, your physical fitness should have reached the level of a high-level warrior, right? Zhuge Tao couldn't help but keep saying, Dike, I remember that it didn't take long for you to reach the level of medium general, did you? Are you going to reach the level of high general so soon? Well, that's about it. I guess it's almost too fast, Dike chuckled as he rubbed his nose. In the past few months, maybe because I've been fighting more in the wilderness, my physical fitness has improved quite quickly. Di Gu, the other martial artist's strength is improving slower and slower as they move forward. On the other hand, your strength is improving faster and faster, and you are almost becoming a high-level general. This potential is almost like catching up with the captain, Yen Luo also exclaimed. Alright, Dike's strength has improved quickly, which is a good thing for our phantom team. The stronger his strength, the more efficient we will be in hunting beast-level monsters in the wilderness, Ling Ying said repeatedly. If you want to improve your strength quickly, you need to work harder and fight harder in your daily life. Upon hearing this, Yen Luo hesitated for a moment, while Zhuge Tao also smiled helplessly and said, Captain, I can't be with you and Kodi. If I could become the god of war in my life, I would already be satisfied. Hey, I don't have much hope for improvement anymore. No matter how hard I try, it's in vain. If I fight hard, maybe one day I'll end up in the wilderness. Su Gu also shook his head and smiled bitterly. Ling Ying, whose eyebrows furrowed slightly upon hearing this, was about to speak when Manager Fang pushed the door in and said with a smile, A few of you, I have already consulted with the higher-ups. Our alliance headquarters is willing to offer 500 million Chinese dollars to purchase the body of this red-crowned golden snake. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Divide Money. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Divide Money 500 million. Upon hearing these words, Dike and his companions couldn't help but feel a shock in their spirits, with some surprise in their hearts. Yen Luo, the youngest, couldn't hide his joy on his face. Generally speaking, the value of high-level monster materials sold to HR Alliance Mall ranges from 50 million to 500 million. The rare red-crowned golden snake is obviously the most valuable species. 500 million. Manager Fang, is this price a bit low? The most calm Ling Ying couldn't help but frown slightly. Manager Fang has given a ceiling price of 500 million yuan, which seems very sincere. However, it is normal for rare monsters like the red-crowned golden snake, which are close to the lord level and have a value exceeding the upper limit of the normal price. So how much do you say? Manager Fang also frowned and asked in reverse. Ling Ying didn't hesitate to say, with the rarity of the red-crowned golden snake, it can at least be worth 7 or 8 billion, right? Manager Fang, who shook his head lightly, smiled and said repeatedly, if we had snake bile, we would be willing to pay 800 million. Unfortunately, without the most precious snake bile, the value of this red-crowned golden snake corpse would have been greatly discounted. If it weren't for its strength approaching the lord level, which is too rare, we wouldn't have been able to directly pay a high price of 500 million. Di Gu, did you hear that? You ate that snake gallbladder, but you only ate 3 billion in one bite. Yen Luo stared and continued. 3 billion yuan per mouth. Dike was also somewhat stunned and speechless, while Ling Ying kept saying, it's just 3 billion yuan. Isn't our brother who went through life and death together worth 3 billion yuan? Manager Fang, my brother almost lost his life for this red-crowned golden snake. I won't ask you for more, it's a fixed price of 600 million Chinese coins. If you agree to sell this red-crowned golden snake to you, otherwise we'll have to find someone else. I think this rare red-crowned golden snake with strength close to the Lord level is not only interested in your HR alliance, Ling Ying continued. Glancing at Manager Fang of Dike and hesitating, Ling Ying had already signaled to Yen Luo beside him to collect the body of the red-crowned golden snake and prepare to take people away. As Yen Luo approached to collect the body of the red-crowned golden snake, Manager Fang couldn't help but say repeatedly, okay, 600 million is 600 million, I'll take it. After selling the body of the red-crowned golden snake for a high price of 600 million yuan, several members of the Phantom team did not rush to leave the HR Alliance Mall. Instead, they asked for a private room in a tea house in the leisure and entertainment area of the mall. In the antique quiet box, several cups of tea, several kinds of dim sum, the fragrance of tea and the sweet smell of dim sum spread out, and Dike, sitting on the sofa beside the tea table, was chatting and sharing money at will. Not just ordinary beast-level monsters, besides the red-crowned golden snake, we went to the wilderness and killed a total of 27 beast-level monsters this time. Among them, there were 16 elementary beast-level monsters, 10 medium beast-level monsters, and 1 high-level beast-level monster. Ling Ying looked at the printed paper and said, among these beast-level monsters, I led the main force to hunt 13, and Dike led the main force to hunt 6. The main goal of elite warrior teams like the Phantom team when going to the wilderness is to hunt down beast-level monsters. After all, compared to the general value of beast-level monster materials that are only a few thousand yuan, beast-level monster materials worth several million yuan are more valuable. So, although the Phantom Squad also collects some valuable high-level beast weapon-level monster materials when hunting monsters, the money for selling beast weapon-level monster materials is only a small fraction, and they are basically evenly distributed. Only higher-value monster materials at the level of beast generals can make more sense to divide the money based on their respective efforts during hunting. Captain Ling Ying had already calculated the distribution ratio based on the amount of effort put in during monster hunting. After roughly explaining to the team members the price of each monster-level monster material and everyone's effort during hunting, they directly divided the money based on the total price of the monster-level monster material sold. The materials of the 20.7 Beast Generals level monsters were sold for a total of 538 million, of which 320 million belonged to me. Dike and Jiang Fang had 92 million, Zhuge, Ling Ying said and quickly transferred the money from the public account of the Phantom Squad to Dike and the others. After dividing the money from the sale of monster materials at the levels of beast soldiers and beast generals, Ling Ying continued solemnly, and the last red-crowned golden snake, this is our biggest gain this time. When hunting the red-crowned golden snake, Dike and I made the main force, but in the end, the red-crowned golden snake was killed by Dike, so he should have been divided into 40%. I got 20%, and the remaining 40%. Jiang Fang, Zhuge, Lao Su, and Yen Luo each got 10%. So, Dike got 2,400 million. Captain, before Ling Ying finished speaking, Dike quickly spoke up, which immediately attracted Ling Ying and the others to turn their heads. Dike also said repeatedly, I've eaten all the snake bile worth 300 million, so it's not appropriate to split the money. I don't want the money from the sale of the red-crowned golden snake corpse. Upon hearing this, Jiang Fang on the side also said repeatedly, I don't want it either, Captain. It's thanks to everyone that Dike can come back alive this time. You should share the 600 million yuan sold by the red-crowned golden snake. Don't say that. If I killed the red-crowned golden snake, I won't be polite to you. However, the red-crowned golden snake died under the knife of Dike. He played the main force, what's eating a snake bile? The red-crowned golden snake was killed by Dike, so he naturally has the right to share the money, Ling Ying continued. Zhuge Tao also hurriedly said, that's right. We are all members of a martial arts team, brothers who have gone through life and death. Don't say these ignorant words. It was his good luck that Dike was able to come back alive. He managed to hold on to it on his own, and we couldn't help much either. Dike, I said before that you ate 300 million in one bite, it was just a joke. You killed the red-crowned golden snake, not to mention eating a snake bile. Even if you ate the entire snake, there was nothing to say, Yen Luo quickly spoke up. If I were to eat the entire red-crowned golden snake, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to come back. Dike shook his head and smiled. Ling Ying and the others couldn't help but burst into laughter. Disco, who had made a joke, immediately said in a serious tone, I'll take my share of the snake bile from the red-crowned golden snake. I really can't ask for any more money from the sale of the red-crowned golden snake corpse. When Zhuge Tao frowned and wanted to say something more, Ling Ying decisively said, so. The money from the sale of the red-crowned golden snake, let's just split it equally. 600 million, which happens to be 100 million per person. Everyone doesn't need to say anything more, that's it. Since Ling Ying has already said so, everyone naturally has no objections, and Dike can't say anything more. After dividing the money and chatting for a while, the few of them got up and left, each returning home. A curvaceous blue coupe was driving in the congested traffic of the main urban area of the base city, while Dike, sitting in the passenger seat, looked out at the tall buildings and felt a bit lost. Nowadays, there are only 6 base cities in the entire country of China. The main urban area of any base city is even more bustling than a provincial capital city in the past, which cannot be compared to the small county where Liu Mingke worked as a firefighter. No matter how bustling it is, this place is still quite unfamiliar to Dike. What are you thinking? Regretting the previous refusal, did you miss more than 1 billion? Jiang Fang, who stopped at the traffic light intersection, turned to look at Dike and asked jokingly. Upon hearing this, Dike, who had come to his senses, shook his head and smiled, no. I was thinking that we need to work hard and earn back that 1 billion yuan as soon as possible. After all, we are not alone now, we need to earn more money for our future children's milk powder. Who's going to give birth to you? Jiang Fang's pretty face turned slightly red with a white eye on Dike, who smiled and reached out to touch Jiang Fang. What do you think? Don't make a fuss. You patted Dike's mischievous hand and saw that the green light at the intersection was on. Jiang Fang quickly started the car and drove forward. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Power Techniques. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Power Techniques. After returning home, Jiang Fang and the nanny in charge of cooking went to buy groceries together, while Dike went to the martial arts training hall upstairs to start practicing his knife and body techniques. After returning from buying groceries, Jiang Fang heard a sharp roar from upstairs and knew that Dike was still practicing swordsmanship. So she worked with her nanny and began preparing a sumptuous dinner. For warriors, there is no saying of eating less at night. Due to the superior physical fitness and good digestion ability of warriors, most of them have a large appetite. The energy contained in a sumptuous dinner may not be enough for Dike to spend half an hour practicing swordsmanship. So, the true way for warriors to replenish their energy is not by eating, at least not by eating ordinary food on Earth, but by practicing genetic energy to absorb energy from the universe. After waiting for a table of about 10 dishes, with meat, vegetables, and soup ready, there was no sound from upstairs. When Jiang Fang went upstairs to invite Dike to eat, he saw Dike sitting cross-legged on the ground of the martial arts training hall, seemingly practicing his genetic abilities. Why is cultivation starting at this moment? Jiang Fang, who frowned slightly at the sight, was hesitating whether to wake up Dike. However, Dike frowned and opened his eyes, with a hint of helplessness flashing in his eyes. Can we only enter that dream when we're asleep? It's time to eat. Jiang Fang couldn't help but exclaim as Dike opened his eyes. Dike also stood up in response and went downstairs with Jiang Fang. After practicing swordsmanship and body techniques for 2 or 3 hours, Dike, who wanted to enter a dream and ponder the power technique of the crimson golden armored figure, did not cultivate his genes in time to replenish his body's energy consumption. Now he is really hungry. After having dinner with Jiang Fang, Dike quickly returned to the second-floor martial arts training hall to cultivate his genetic abilities. After a sumptuous and delicious dinner, my stomach was full, but my whole body seemed to be a bit hungry, eager to replenish energy. With the help of the guidance technique of Jiu Chong Thunderblade, which came with Jiu Chong Hun Yuan, I practiced for 2 to 3 hours to replenish the energy consumption during the previous practice of knife and body techniques. After allowing all the cells in my body to absorb cosmic energy and reach a saturation state, Dike stretched lazily and got up to move his body before sitting cross-legged again, closing his eyes and entering a meditative state. Dike, who had abandoned all distractions, finally fell asleep slowly in his meditative state and directly entered his dream. He saw the familiar sea of fire and the red golden figure hanging in the air above it with the appearance of the golden flowing light in the sky. Dike no longer blocked the sword in front of the crimson figure, but came behind him and looked at his back, frowning and pondering. How can we most clearly and directly feel how he exerted his force when he drew the sword? Dike was thinking that as the Zerg warriors appeared in the sky and teamed up to launch terrifying attacks like destroying the sky and earth, the crimson figure in front also took out a dark red sword covered in complex secret patterns. We're about to take action, what should we do? Do we need to have a sense of possession? Dike, who was anxiously thinking about it, suddenly had a flash of inspiration in his mind. He thought of the ghost possession in the supernatural movie and gritted his teeth, pouncing directly at the crimson golden figure who raised his hand and wanted to wield a knife. In the next moment, Dike clearly felt as if he had transformed into the figure of the crimson golden armor. Every inch of muscle and every cell in his body seemed to be instantly tense, like an open bowstring, accumulating strength. Then, with that terrifying blow, the instant burst of power surged towards the sword in his hand along with the surging energy inside his body. In an instant, Dike felt as if he had become an omnipotent and powerful deity. The perfect burst of power and the fierce and violent knife technique that could tear apart space completely shook his mind. However, it was precisely because of the explosive technique of power and the perfect and mysterious knife technique that Dike was deeply shocked. He could clearly feel everything, but he couldn't understand it at all. He was completely confused and couldn't understand why the crimson golden armor could unleash such terrifying power for a moment. As for the knife technique, it was as unclear as reading a heavenly book. Only the volcanic eruption-like frenzy was deeply ingrained in Dike's mind. That's it, the technique for unleashing this power is too advanced to understand. How could he mobilize the power of all his muscles, even almost every cell in his body? How did he actually do it? After being shocked, Dike became full of doubts. If the knife technique can still feel some exposed artistic fur, it can be considered a perfect burst of power, as if a perfect machine is launched, completely flawless, making Dike feel like he has no way to start studying. And just as Dike was feeling a headache and depressed, he suddenly felt like time had turned back, instantly returning to the moment when the figure of the crimson golden armor was about to wield the knife. At the same time, the flow of time slowed down, and the figure of the crimson golden armor was slowly wielding the knife, and its muscle cells were also tense and exerting force. Is it possible to replay it in slow motion? Dike, who was somewhat surprised, quickly and carefully felt the power process of the crimson golden armor figure. Although the entire process of wielding the knife slowed down a lot, the perfect technique of exerting force still only gave Dike a general feeling. The technique of exerting force is not something that can be learned directly with just a single experience. Just like practicing swordsmanship, it requires repeated practice to reach a level of proficiency and specialization. The same goes for exerting force, constantly trying and pondering. But Dike was still keenly aware that the figure of the crimson golden armor initially exerted force from both legs, through the spine, waist, and abdomen, driving the muscles of both arms and even the whole body, linking general explosive force. In fact, the human body is like a very delicate machine. How to operate it effectively to unleash power. The figure of the crimson golden armor has already demonstrated to Dike and pointed out the correct direction. Dike, who also understood this principle, was still somewhat confused about how to make physical strength and genetic energy complement each other, and even mobilize the power of every cell in his body. After experiencing it through slow motion replay a few times, Dike stopped for a moment and said, "What you get on paper is shallow, and light perception is not enough. You still need to try again and again in reality, ponder and practice in order to find the technical path." With such thoughts in mind, Dike quickly regained consciousness from his dream, then stood up and picked up his knife, starting to use his attacks time and time again to ponder the technique of exerting force. Since he started to unleash his strength from his legs, he could practice his body movements simultaneously. As he made his move, Dike, whose legs were unleashing his strength, darted around the martial arts training hall like a phantom, constantly changing his position. With the help of his explosive power and speed, his seemingly simple move of chopping was naturally full of power. In the adjacent video room, after dinner, Jiang Fang, who had washed up, was watching a movie. Suddenly, she heard the sharp whistling sound coming from the quiet martial arts training hall for a long time. She couldn't help but frown and press the pause button, then got up and went to the next martial arts training hall. When did Dike's body speed become so fast? Jiang Fang couldn't help but be surprised to see Dike's constantly changing figure in the martial arts training hall, immersed in the contemplation of magical skills. End of this chapter.